Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. I am your host, Rich Owens, and joining me this week, it's quieter. It's definitely quieter around here than normal. We're a bit FMT deficient this morning, if I'm honest with you, which we'll get into shortly. But rather than focusing on who isn't here, I think let's just take a second to focus on who is. I'm joined today by the wonderful Rich Callum. Hello, mate. How are we?
Hi, Rich. All the audio listeners were on tenterhooks there to discover which one of the members was here, and all of them are disappointed. But yes, unfortunately, it is me. No, I'm really good. Thank you, Rich. I'm really good. I'm looking forward to this unique opportunity to have a one-on-one podcast with Mr. Rich Owens. So it's going to be a good time.
Wow, yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? I don't think since I started. I was going to say steadied the good ship FMT. It's not steady at all. It's not steady at all. I'm there. I'm a little bit like Dwight Schrute in the episode of The Office where they go on the booze cruise. I'm out the front, like with the pretend steering wheel, steering the ship, whilst behind me more competent people are in charge. That's me. I'm shrooting today.
That is a fantastic reference. That is a fantastic
isn't it though? Isn't it? Because it's a little bit niche. It's a good bit of television pop culture and also just depressingly accurate. So that's why it works so well. I think as part of my tenure as host of the Good Ship FMT, I don't think we've ever done a one-on-one podcast. I don't think it's ever happened. We've always had a Jeb and or a Kev and or an Alice in the earlier days, and now and or a Callum. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, mate. We're going to have a nice time, just we two, just to fill everybody in on where everybody else is. Kev unfortunately couldn't make it this morning. He's having internet connectivity issues, so we feel terrible for him because we love having Kev around, and Kev unfortunately couldn't make it this morning due to bad internet. So. No, we love you and we miss you, Kev. If you were here, this would be a more positive experience because it's impossible for it to not be. I mean, we'll try. Right. I mean, I've literally got the Sunshine Kid sat next to me. Like he's just sunshine and rainbows. And even just with Callum, it's still not going to be quite as positive as if Kev was here as well. No. And also, I think we should just take a second to address our other colleague, Jeb. You may have seen this week. We've put a couple of little tweets out, as has Jeb. Jeb is officially red injured. He's on the physio's table. He's unavailable for podcast for the next couple of months. Jeb is the busiest human being in the universe. I can't think of a single person I know that works as hard as Jeb. The hours that Jeb works and the locations that he works in. Like if I had Jeb's job and it was 5 minutes away from my house, I'd still be tired. Jeb is traveling all around Europe. He's doing all of his wonderful behind the scenes work in a number of different places. And the man is exhausted and deserves some rest. So Callum, I know you and Jeb, best mates. You'll be missing him, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a genuine shame because I've not actually had an awful lot of opportunities to get on the pod with Jeb. I've been on for a little while now, but we've been like ships passing in the night on a lot of occasions. To dispel all the rumors, we do actually love each other, and like deeply as well. It's gone very deep over the last few weeks, as you could see from the message he put out where he said I was all right. So you can see that it's reciprocated from both ends. But no, I think it's the right thing. I think he was potentially stressing a little bit about missing weeks, and so we've sent him to the specialist. We've given him the best treatment we possibly can. We spent a lot of money on it. So fingers crossed he'll be back in 2 to 19 weeks. One of those nice specific injuries on FM that you get. So but we wish him well, and hopefully it starts slowing down a little bit so he can come back into our warm embrace.
Exactly, and what a warm embrace it is. It's the toastiest of hugs. He's still here. He's still around behind the scenes. He's still doing all the wonderful, because he can't help himself. He just physically cannot help himself from being involved behind the scenes with projects and different things. So he's still here, and as soon as he is ready, he is going to be back, and we cannot wait. So, because if anything, especially without Jeb and without Kev today, podcast is a little bit beard deficient. And I know we've both grown one because we're both adults. We can both manage facial hair.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say if you just saw us out of context, just those two boys, they've got some beards going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing compared to Jeb and Kev. So yeah, we need them back just for the fans of beard.
I think between them, like on their own, they've probably got more beard than us combined. So, you know, if you had a Kev here, you know, you might need to have 3 Rich Callums and 2 Rich Owens to make up Jeb's beard. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm having to use some of the hair on my head, on my face, and still I wouldn't get to the levels. So yeah, it's a tricky challenge. You know, hair grows in different ways, kids. You know, that's nice thing to learn.
Doesn't it just? No. Doesn't it?
We're all different. We're all unique.
we're all just different, special, unique people. And you know, if I happen to go to the barbers this week and I ask them to glue the offcuts back onto my face, and then I talk in a slightly northern accent because I miss my friend Jeb, then so be it. That's my prerogative, and that's something
unique. That's unique. It's all fine. Rich, I feel like I didn't ask how you are. How are you?
Clearly, based on the last 3 minutes of conversation, very well, very well. Very well. Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy week because, as it turns out, listeners, when you reach a certain age, you just have responsibilities. You just have loads of additional responsibilities just outside of just work and trying to be a parent. There's just other things you have to do, and all these other things are just depressingly time consuming. So it's been a busy one, but it's been a good one. I feel like I can tick things off my list of things that I needed to do. It has, unfortunately, for me this week come at the cost of doing things like streaming. So it's been a very, very quiet week for me. But, you know, apart from that, cannot complain. And it's Sunday morning. I get to sit down with Callum and I get to talk about Football Manager for the next hour or so. So really cannot complain. I cannot complain in the slightest. Perfect. That, if I'm honest with you, mate, I think that kind of counts as a bit of a segue when you really stop and think about it, because we've mentioned Football Manager, and it's a podcast called Football Manager Therapy. So we should probably talk about Football Manager, and I suppose we'll start off the traditional FMT way. It's time for a save update. I get to ask my favourite question in the world. Hey, Callum, how's it going, man?
Hey, but it's going great. Okay. Thanks, Rich. That joke is just top tier.
I'll never let it die. I'll never let it die.
People have started coming into my stream and saying it as well now. So it's now a thing. It's definitely now a thing. Or it's Slough a thing. No, I've tried too hard. So Slough. Slough, since you're last with me, I think, if I remember rightly, I'd sort of updated with my trials and tribulations in my first season in League 2. So I'm quite a few years into the save at this point. I believe at that point it might have been 8 or 9. I've now remembered, it was 9. So the 9th season, we finished 19th in League 2. And that took us to the next season, League 2. Were we going to stagnate in this division for a few years, or were we going to come out of it and get into that next division? So that was my main sort of goal. Obviously, it was looking at promotion from League 2. I tried to look at goals ultimately. I think on FM this year, I've managed to be able to set up teams pretty well defensively. I can set up a good unit. I am a massive fan of a defensive midfielder on FM23. I never really use them, especially 2. I would quite often use 1 if you wanted to have 1 dropping in, but this year I use 2. I use 2 DMs, which almost creates like a back 6. I don't like my fullbacks adventuring too far either, so that was how I sort of set up to get out of League 2. And initially in the season, it definitely started working. We bought a couple of players in who looked like they were going to influence us going forward. We had to replace a few key members of our squad over the summer. We lost Harry Smith, who was a player who was our all-time top goal scorer, 36 goal. How many was it? 130 something goals for the club. He's now a terrible scout in our staff system. 5 judging player ability and potential, but my word, he's handsome, so it's fine. And he's still about the club. But so we were left with a bit of a goal deficiency up there. So we just sort of looked at, you don't necessarily, when you have a goal deficiency, need to immediately look at the striker. I think that is a key thing for FM. It's very easy to go, well, I'm not scoring goals, let's buy a new striker who scored goals last season. That doesn't work that way. And I had a centre forward called Lornie Powers, who's a new gen. And I got him in from Dulwich Hamlet, and I got him in for my first year in League Two, and he scored about 12 goals. And he's got all the attributes you'd want. You know, if you saw, in fact, Rich, what attributes would you want for a centre forward? If you could choose just four attributes for a centre forward, what would you want?
Now, for the way that I play the game, which is incorrectly, but there are the four that I tend to look at for centre forwards or for a goal scorer, finishing is something that is important to me. I look at composure. Composure is another big one for me. And then when it comes to the other two that I look at, my logic being, if the player can't get into the right positions to score the goals, then they're not going to score the goals. So kind of positioning is something that I look at. And then I also look at acceleration, which I know sounds like a strange one. But again, like if they need the opportunity to get into those positions, and unless you're playing them as, you know, like a target forward on support where they're not going to be particularly mobile, they need that little bit of burst of pace just to get maybe past that last defender or just into that little pocket of space, and then they can maybe convert the chance. So those are my four. How many did I get right, Callum?
Well, out of the ones I was thinking of, you got 3 out of the 4. The positioning one was an interesting one, actually. And with your reckoning, I get that. I'm looking usually for a centre forward. I look at things like first touch. I look at things like dribbling as well to see how they're going to get on the ball. That's obviously dependent on what role you're playing them in. I personally am a stickler for an advanced forward. I love an advanced forward. I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world, because I do believe it is the most used striker role, the advanced forward, and that is what Lornie is. He is an advanced forward. So let me just chuck this at you, okay? He has got finishing 15, composure 15, acceleration 15. This lad's playing in League Two, Rich. This lad's playing in League Two. He's got the first touch and the dribbling to make up for that, you know, as well. He's got I think it's around 14, 15 for those as well. He's a striker. Like, he's a striker who should be scoring some goals. And so I hung my hat on him, my proverbial hat, not a real hat. I'm not currently wearing one. But yeah, I was very much helping and hoping that Lornie would drive me through. And he did certainly do better. However, as I was alluding to before, it's not all about that centre forward. You know, that centre forward with those sort of key attributes you would expect to be banging in the goals, but he only got 11 in that season. So I thought, well, how do we support him better? You know, the supporting cast needs to be stronger. And so what I decided to do was something that I don't usually do, and have 3 attacking midfielders. I brought 3 attacking midfielders on. I decided to give away with width. And I thought, we're playing centrally. We're going to play narrow. You know, we're going to play through the middle. Don't get me wrong. I was cheeky. I added a couple of, stay wider instructions. I do those now. I'm so good. I know. I do. I'm so good at the game. So, I mean, because the key I noticed, and I don't know what I'll talk to you like you've never played FM before. If you put an attacking midfielder on, he has no roles to do at all. Like, his instructions, he has no instructions whatsoever. You're just literally telling him to be there and do what he wants. So they are there, I see, a bit like clay or Play-Doh, and they're there to be molded into what exactly you want them to be. You know, a shadow striker and an advanced playmaker, which I do use in this, have much more specific roles. They know what they're doing. And attacking midfielders going, well, boss, you've told me I'm attacking mid. What am I doing? What am I doing in that role? So, you have a look at his attributes in depth. Is he a dribbler? Is he a shooter? Is he, a crosser of the ball? And then you can sort of adapt your attacking midfielder however you want. So I sort of had those 3 in there, in behind the striker. And straight away, the big difference I had was they were producing goals. Whether that was assists or goals, they were contributing to the goals going forward. And suddenly, this team that finished 19th in the league last season were up to the upper echelons of the league. And we were battling around the playoff positions, and even teetering towards the automatic promotion places. And as people know, in League Two, there are 3 automatic promotion places, and you've got the 4 playoff slots as well. So you've got lots of opportunities to give yourself a good go at getting out of the division. We did further strengthen in January as well. We brought in a couple of loan signings. One of the funniest one I brought in, and this was actually at the start of the signing, at the start of the season, was a guy called Facundo Calderon, who doesn't sound like he should be allowed to play in League Two. Far too fancy of a name.
No.
However, he's Argentinian, and what made me really laugh about him, I signed him from Middlesbrough, and Middlesbrough were in the Premier League. And I saw him come up on the loan list, and I looked across, and his value was between 35 and 40 million pounds. And I went, chat, this would be funny, wouldn't it? Imagine if we got him put in a loan deal and they accepted it. I was paying him nothing, no wages or anything like that. I said, well, he's not going to accept the deal though, is he? You know, come on. He accepted it. I was like, there's something afoot here. Like, what exactly is going on? This guy's worth 40 million pounds. Obviously, the moment he joined us, his value went from 40 million to 950k, which I think is criminal. You know, no, I mean, it seems a bit harsh. But the boy is predicted to be a Premier League talent. And when you've got a player like that, you just think, wow, I couldn't get him back for season 2. I was devastated. But he was another one who just fit so seamlessly into this system as an attacking mid. So we got nearer and nearer the season, and I thought, you know what? I think this is a promotion season. I don't think this is another season in League Two. This is a promotion season, and we got further and further into it. And then suddenly, we had about 10 games to go, and we were sat in about 6th position. So I thought, we're going to get playoffs. And if anyone remembers, my record in playoffs is absolutely diabolical in FM23. I have, and that's just being honest. I spent, I believe it was 7 years trying to get out of the Vanarama South. 6 of those years I lost in playoffs. So I'm becoming a bit of a meme with regards to that. So as much as I was like, this is great, I could get playoffs, in a much more real sense, I was like, I've got to get autos here. I'm not getting out of the playoffs. I've got to get automatic promotion. And so we went on a streak where we played out of those 10 games. We drew 2 of them. Not ideal. But we won 7. Oof. So we won 7 and we drew 2. For the mathematicians, I believe that's 23 points. Please do feel free to correct. Maths is a lie. But I got 23 points, which solidified, with a game to go, solidified automatic promotion from League Two, which was far beyond. We were predicted 19th at the start of the season, and we got automatic promotion. So as you can tell, I am the Messiah. I am incredible. Yeah, I mean, we lost our last game of the season, which unfortunately made us finish 3rd rather than 2nd, because 3rd beat us. But that was because I brought, in the last game of the season when there's nothing really you always bring on the lads who are running out of contract. You give them their applause. I may have brought them on too early. We were 1-0 up and we lost 3-1. But it was fine. They had their run out and the fans all loved it. But so we were promoted. We were promoted to League One at the second time of asking, which from our trials and tribulations during the conference and the Conference South, it was a real result. It was a real result to get out of the division in such a way. And that then brings me to what we are going to discuss in length next. And that was the summer transfer window, something that people, in real life are now turning their heads towards as the season begins to end. And in real life, will all the playoffs be done by Tuesday? Will they be done? I think they will, won't they? They will, because I think at the time of recording, I believe that I have a feeling that the League Two playoff final is today. And then tomorrow is the League One playoff final. And Championships happened.
The Championship's already happened. Congratulations to Luton, by the way.
Congratulations, Luton.
Premier League football in Luton next year. They have literally completed non-league to legend. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Madness.
absolutely delighted for Luton. But yeah, so Championship was last night. I think League Two is today, and then tomorrow afternoon is League One, which I'm
is
not
it
nervous
Rich?
about.
Is it Rich? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Anyone involved in that? Anyone involved in that?
Hard to say. Hard to say. I'm terrified. But yes. So yes. By the time this episode is out publicly on Tuesday morning, all of the Football League playoffs will have finished. Yes.
So we naturally all will be turning our heads towards the summer, and the summer, in my opinion, is one of the most fun parts of Football Manager. It's when you get to reevaluate your squad, you get to look at what you're doing with it. And I think everyone approaches summers in different ways. And I'll be honest with you, I've approached summers in very different ways to the way I approach this particular Slough summer. So I'm going to tell you about my Slough summer, and then should we go into the more like the general of how we maybe deal with summers. So this particular summer, I was bold. I thought, you know what? I believe in my boys. I believe in them. They've got me here. They've got me to League One. I don't want to mess with this. I'm going to give it a go. So I did identify two areas that I wanted to improve upon. One was a player Calderon, who I mentioned earlier, who was on loan, who is now not on loan. So I had to replace him. So, my hands were tied on that one. He wouldn't come back. So I brought in a new attacking midfielder, and I also brought in a new centre-half, because I have a centre-half who, bless his heart, his name's Rafael Arroy. I've had him since the Vanarama South, and he has been overperforming every year. And I just worry that this year is one too many, leagues for him. So he's still very much amongst the squad, but he's not going to be starting for me. And the two signings I made, and that's all I made, considering I've just gone up and I've got £500,000 in the bank. I was like, no, I believe in them. They deserve a chance. And so me and Chat had a little bit of fun, Rich, I'll be honest with you. We did a whole summer of scouting, and we looked and we went for these players. And then two players stuck out to us. The first was a man called Neil Harper. Now, he is a 6'4" centre-half, new gen, and he can't really head the ball. He can tackle. He's not very fast. He can mark. He knows where to stand, which is a bonus. But there was one thing in his player traits that we particularly liked. And what he likes to do is he likes to get the crowd going. And we thought, yes, we need that at Slough. So every time the ball goes out for a corner, Neil's going, come on, every single time. And that's what we needed. We needed Big Neil getting excited about absolutely everything. So straight away, it was like, he goes top of our list, we're getting him in. He's a character. And that's what we need. Hashtag narrative. Next player we bring in, attacking mid. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a plethora of attacking mids in the world of Football Manager. Everyone thinks they can play in cam. Everyone thinks they can. Well, they can't. I'll tell you that. But we brought in a player. We brought in a player called Matt Walsh. Now, fairly, generic name, you think, just a standard guy. We went to his player traits, Rich. Now, his player traits. First of all, argues with officials. Love that. Get in their head. Okay. Get in their head, Also, matched up with argues with officials, winds up opposition. Love it. Absolutely love it. He is a terrible person. He's a terrible person. And we are going to love him at Slough Town. We're absolutely going to love him. So, he is an awful human being, and that's why we've got him in the squad. And we played our first game. So we only signed those two players. I've kept the core. I've kept the team. I believed in them. Brought those two into the starting lineup. First game of the season. The only game I've played so far of the new season. Preston North End away from home. It's a big name. You think that's a tough fixture. Once again, inevitably, we're Slough Town, despite the fact we're massive. Everyone knows we're massive. Predicted 24th. Unbelievable. go into Preston North End, no expectations. Obviously, Neil in the changing room, he's just, come on, everyone, come on. Matt Walsh is knocking on the officials' doors. Come on, ref, what are you doing? You're rubbish. You know, it's all happening. We only go and beat Preston North End 2-0. Unbelievable scenes. Unbelievable scenes. 2-0 at North End. Matt Walsh scores and assists on debut while shushing the crowd and jeering to all his opposition. I mean, honestly, we're in for a fantastic season at Slough. But as I say, a really, really different way of doing a transfer window and doing a summer, especially a promotion one, because usually you might alter a lot more than I have done.
Sure.
But I suppose, Rich, the question is, how do you deal with an FM summer?
Hey, look at you go. That was beautiful. A beautiful segue. Before we dip our toes into this, I'd just like to say, I think if teaching doesn't work out for you in the long run, I would wholeheartedly recommend you getting a job as a footballing agent, because you have just sold me Neil and Matt Walsh, who, let's be honest with you, I'm about to say, I don't think we've used this word on this iteration of the podcast as yet. Matt Walsh just was world-class shithouse by the sounds of things.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, just absolutely rotten to the core. And you've got Neil as well, who's 6'4", but he can't head the ball. He is the football. He is the centre back equivalent of when you see a car on the road. They got all those P stickers on the back. It's like, technically I am qualified to do this, but there are just certain things that I don't want to do. And he's like, you know, he's there to get the crowd going. All right, got a corner. Come on, boys. Are you going to score a header, Neil? No, somebody else might.
What's a header?
It's like, what is a header? What is, keep it on the deck? That's Neil's approach. Like, two players who on paper there's lacking key key concepts and key attributes, but you've just made me think that they are the best two players in the history of the game.
We all love them immediately, and they can't really play football. So, but my words, they can talk. So,
but they can talk the talk. They can talk the talk, and they can walk the walk. They can't head balls or keep calm. I love it. I love them both like they were my own children, and I've never met them because they're not real. Summer transfer windows. So when it comes to a summer transfer window, there are, I think, three things that I tend to focus on. Because summer is the big one. The three kind of metrics that I look at are, first and foremost, are there any positions within my squad that I've identified over the past season that need dramatically improving? Like, who has struggled the most? Is it, and again, it's taking into account the things we were discussing earlier. Are they struggling because of the system, or are they struggling because they're just not up to the standard that they need to be at? So that's the first thing that I look at. Second thing that I'm always paying attention to, like anybody who plays the game, are the expiring contracts. Is there anybody who is going to straight away, I might not necessarily need, but are there any players that are too good to pass up based on their upcoming availability? And the same thing as well with higher profile players who have moved to bigger clubs, who may not necessarily be getting the minutes they need. I guess that kind of ties into the second one. And I suppose the third thing, technically the fourth as well, but the other thing I pay attention to are how many of my overperforming players I've got interest from bigger clubs. I think those are the three. I mean, the best example I can give here would be the FMT network save, so my Leicester City save. So we're currently in the summer transfer window, about to head into season 2. And the way that I'm approaching it so far, I identified 2 key areas that I needed a bit of depth in. So I needed a brand new goalkeeper, because God bless Jack Butland, didn't do a terrible job, but, and it pains me to say it, Jack Butland is not a starting Premier League goalkeeper in terms of his representation in Football Manager. In real life, he's clearly the best goalkeeper in the world, and it goes without saying. But on FM, maybe not. So straight away, first piece of business I did was brought in a new goalkeeper, one of the very, very good Turkish keepers from the Turkish Premier League. I can't remember his name because it's been a couple of weeks, but don't worry, we'll cover that later. But he's in. I've also, I think we've mentioned on the pod before, I've rescued Ahmedhodzic from Sheffield United. Because I needed a bit of depth at centre back as well. He was there for £8 million pounds, I think he cost me. In terms of the Leicester save, I've got £40 million left to spend. And at this exact moment in time, I don't know where I'm going to invest that money. And that is because looking at my starting 11, there are about 3, maybe 4 players who have got interest from bigger name clubs. Shockingly enough, Harvey Barnes and James Maddison are 2 of those players. 2 of my starting 11, Harvey Barnes starts on the left wing for me, and James Maddison plays kind of behind the strikers. If they don't move on, if they don't move to a different club and they stay at Leicester City, they will continue to be my starting players in those positions because they're both very good. I like them both a lot, and it's not areas that I feel I need strength. And Harvey Barnes scored a good amount of goals last season. James Maddison contributed to a lot of goals last season. So not as many goals, but quite a few assists. I'm not fussed about replacing them, but if a bigger club come in for them, those are the areas that I will strengthen. So I'm scouting central attacking midfielders. I'm scouting left-sided inside forwards, just so I know if one of those players go, I've got options moving forwards, but it's not something that I'm actively looking to replace. So those are the big ones. Those are the big ones. And I think I've got players like Jamie Vardy as well, who for some reason has got a year left on his deal. Leeds are interested. He's 35. His legs have started to go. Had a very, very strong opening half to the season last season. I think between September and January, I think he scored about 16 goals in all competitions, which isn't bad for a 35-year-old. But then after Christmas, I think the game realized, oh, God, he's 35. He shouldn't be able to run. So just the physicals just start to just plummet. So if he wants to go to Leeds, he can go to Leeds, and that's fine. So in terms of the first team players that might be leaving, I've got contingencies in case they go. In terms of the players that have moved to bigger clubs that might not have been getting the minutes, the key example there is the fact that I've got Renato Sanchez in my midfield. In real life, I think it's his 2nd season at PSG this year. I think he moved last year in real life. I love Renato Sanchez. I'm a big Lille guy. Loved him at Lille. Had high hopes for him at Swansea. But if you ask certain Swansea supporters on the platform if he ever played there, they were like, no, I don't recall Renato Sanchez ever being on loan here. What are you talking about? Definitely never happened. But I'm a big Renato Sanchez guy. He wasn't getting minutes at PSG. He wasn't getting the minutes. He became available on the transfer list for around £19 million. I'm like, well, you're never going to get him cheaper. You're never going to get him at a better price. I had midfield players that were potentially leaving anyway, so it just made sense to pull the trigger on him in the January before and bring him in, because there's a player that I would love at the club. There's a high percentage chance that if he is getting minutes, he's never going to move. He's not going to want to move on. He's not going to want to leave PSG. He is suddenly very, very available. I should probably pull the trigger on him now, otherwise I'll miss out. So, and I'm very glad that I did, because as it turns out, it's Renato Sanchez. He's quite good at football. So that was another one. In terms of the free transfer and free agent market, there haven't been many. In terms of the expiring contracts, I did pick up Diakabi, the centre-back. Again, he came in January. He had 6 months left on his deal. He was worth about £4 million. And I couldn't come to an agreement with, I think, Valencia. I couldn't come to an agreement with them. So rather than wait 6 months and put the offer in for him, I just put the bid in, and they accepted it straight away. Because they're like, well, we can have £4 million or we can have nothing in 6 months. So it made sense to do it that way. But those are the 3 metrics that I normally look at. In terms of the squad needing strengthening with the Leicester team, the core of it is actually quite good. So with the exception of my goalkeeper and the backup centre-back that I've brought in, everybody else has performed quite well. I'm blessed with depth in terms of my fullbacks. I've got 4 good Premier League quality fullbacks. My midfield is now stacked. I've got a bit of depth on the wings, and I've got options up front. So I've been quite lucky so far. But however, had some of those players been criminally underperforming, if I've been struggling with my left backs, for example, had they just not put the effort in, or were getting the average ratings that you would expect, then again, that's an area that you're going to look at and that you're going to be taking care of. But for me, I've been very, very fortunate with this save that hasn't been the case. Obviously, if it's different circumstances for different clubs. Like Callum, as you said, you've approached a transfer window getting promoted. I mean, for me, in those circumstances, and you said yourself, your Slough summer has been a little bit of an anomaly because, like I say, they got you to the dance. It's only fair to give them a shot at it, and I completely agree with that. You know, I think everybody will have saves where they've brought teams up through the leagues, up through the football pyramid, and there will be players in your squads that have been there since day one. Because it's, you know, that, as you say, overperforming. One of my favorite things on FM is a player that just plays above their attributes. It's just such a nice feeling because like, I was right to just take a punt on you and not leave you behind. I had it with an old Sheffield Wednesday save. Matt Penny, for my money, on one of the, I think FM21, was just a Premier League standard left-sided fullback. I mean, attribute-wise, no, absolutely not. But in terms of his in-game performances, ever so good. And Dominic Iorfa as well. He was part of my Premier League defence with Sheffield Wednesday for the whole time I was there. Just too good to drop, played too well. Attribute wise, he'd been lucky if he'd made maybe top 60 centre backs in the league. Like really not great on paper, but just played above those attributes. But again, if you're a newly promoted team and there is quality there available in the transfer market and you've got the money, maybe not to the, you know, the Nottingham Forest extent, you know, maybe not 25 players. Like, okay, you're available. Why not? You're available. Why not? Jesse Lingard, sure. Let's give him a go. Maybe not that level of just bring everybody in for the sake of bringing everybody in. But if there are players that might strengthen a squad there who are available, then why not? Why not take a punt every now and then?
I think it's really interesting actually, because your basic take on it there was obviously in the mold of Leicester. Talking about how you'd sort of done it with Leicester, and I think the other side of the coin, if you like, to that, it can be the likes of the lower league save. So the lower league save, you haven't necessarily got those options to sell players. You might have a lot of deadwood that you cannot physically get rid of. You also might go into seasons genuinely not thinking you're going to do well, because I think a big thing in FM is reputation, and especially if you go up the leagues, as a lot of people, loads and loads of people will be doing saves similar to me, where you start at the bottom and you work to the top, and usually reputation doesn't keep up with that. So you get into this division and like, for example, I'm now in League One. My reputation is probably at best low League Two. Like, and so when I'm trying to compete to get a player, as soon as a team in my league offers for that player as well, he will go to them. He will. It's as clear cut as that. So the reputation is so big, and I do get that to an extent, because, for example, Luton are now in the Premier League. Luton's reputation is the lowest in the Premier League, and it is still probably going to be lower than the likes of Southampton, who have got relegated to the Championship, because Southampton are a well-established club that have been in the Premier League for many, many years. So their reputation should be higher. Luton's might be lower than some of the teams in the Championship. It might be lower than some of the teams in League One, even, you know, like if you're talking of your own Sheffield Wednesday, whose reputation is higher or lower there. In reality, it's probably Wednesday's is higher than Luton's. Now, don't get me wrong, if Luton hang around in the Premier League for a little while, that might alter and it might change. But as it stands, it does take a while to get that reputation up. So when you are this small fish in this massive ocean going, come and play for me, please, come and play for me, most players turn around and go, sorry, who are you? I don't know who you are. You've got two options here. Either absolutely not, I will not touch you with a barge pole. Or secondly, if you give me loads and loads and loads of money, way more money than you should give me, then yes, okay, I will. And that's the difficulty you have with promotions. And I have had it on many occasions where you genuinely go into a season and you go, I'm not going to do anything this year, am I? I've not been able to strengthen where I need to strengthen. I've still got that rubbish right back and I cannot find a better one. And he's still here, you know, and it genuinely, but as I say, offline in particular, summers are my favorite part. I just love sitting there and scouring the world, trying to find talents. I'm starting to get the Premier League wonder kid itch, which I haven't been able to scratch with Slough at the moment. And long term, I will. But you know, that joy of just being in the Premier League and going, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Brazil. Let's have a look how many release clauses I can trigger now. And it's just a thing of beauty. You're like, you're a wonder kid. You're a wonder kid. You're a wonder kid. And I've just bought you all for 12 million total. I couldn't have even got a third of James Maddison for the price I've bought all of you for. And that's when it gets really, really beautiful. And I think what we're learning as well, aren't we, Rich, and Kev included, when we're getting a little bit braver as streamers, as people like watching us do that on stream as well. And I think that's what I'm now learning more and more. The last stream I did was a transfer window stream, and everyone is now fully on board with Matt Walsh and with Neil Harper, because that is what, we bought into them. We found their silly traits and we're like, yeah, they're brilliant. So now I've played one game and I've got people in my Discord talking about Neil Harper and Matt Walsh. If I hadn't done that stream, that summer on stream, I would have introduced them, I would have tried to sell them, but probably people wouldn't have been invested as they are now, I suppose, in those two players. So yeah, as I say, I think it's a great part of the game, and I'd be very surprised if people who play FM wouldn't agree with us in the sense of it's just great. A good summer is just so fun. Put a bit of music on and just enjoy.
Exactly. It's one of those things, isn't it? We've talked a lot over the past kind of like few weeks about different aspects of the game, and especially as content creators, what we want to be showing people on screen when we're creating, when we're streaming, whatever it may be. We talked about things like training schedules. We've talked about all sorts. A good summer transfer window. Everybody likes a summer transfer window. It's one of the universal truths. It's one of those universal things, and everybody enjoys it because chats get invested in new players. There's always going to be names that get thrown out by people. It's like, oh, I've done an offline save with Crawley, and I signed this centre back, and he's available, and he develops really, really well. It's definitely worth a look, but you'll never have heard of him. You're like, oh, you are correct. Or just, it's that magnificent feeling, is it? Like, say, haven't done it myself in a little while either, and I might have to with Leicester, where you're just like, right, I'm going to get on a plane, I'm going to go to South America, and I'm going to walk around, I'm just going to point to people like, you there, boy, you have 17 acceleration and 19 pace. Congratulations, you are now a Premier League footballer. Get on the plane. It's like, you there, you are 6'7" and you have heading of 16 and you are 15 years old. Congratulations, boy, on the plane. How much do you? £400,000. I shall give you 350 and you'll thank me for it. And it's just, oh, what a feeling. What a feeling. Then you get back and there's your youth team and you're like, nice.
For the audio only listeners, you missed that there. Rich did actually look up when he talked to the 6'7" person. He did look up. I mean, that was genius. You really got into character.
Which is weird because I did it, but I specifically picked 6'7" because I myself am 6'6", so I would need to look up at that person. If anybody below 6'6", I'm like, and how tall are you? 6'4", you dwarf. Away from my squad, you shall win no headers this day. It's just one of those. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Everybody's far too small. Everybody's far too small.
Agreed.
Too little. How dare you?
Agreed.
But it is such a lovely feeling, isn't it? Just getting to go and just pick and choose the best of the best from spread those South American countries as well. Because it costs nothing.
Do you leave money to the end of the window? Because I think that's probably the question out of all of the conversation we've had, I'd like to know for people. Because when you look at managers in real life, there's certain clubs who get all their business done very early. So they have those new signings bed in during pre-season, and then deadline day isn't a thing. They just don't even contemplate it. Their business is done. They don't need any more. Whereas there are other clubs, like Everton, for example, are quite regularly in this, where they get to deadline day and they still need one or two players, and you're either disappointed or you're happy at the end of that day. How do you play it, Rich? Do you prefer to leave a bit of money in the budget, so after the first few games you've played, you go, oh no, I still need a new left back? Or do you rather go, right, I've done my squad now, I'm ready, we're going?
It's very rare. It's very rare that I manage a club that the budget is big enough for me to spend it all in one go early doors, if that makes sense. There's always going, because I'm not generally speaking, I'm not if I've got £60 million to spend, I'm unlikely that I'm probably not going to buy two £30 million players, because there probably aren't going to be two players worth £30 million that are going to want to come and play for me, if that makes the most amount of sense. Generally speaking, there will, again, using Leicester as a prime example here, I've got £40 million to spend at the moment. I would be shocked if I spent all £40 million in this transfer window. And I'm not holding it back for the sake of thinking I might need some as a contingency a little bit further down the line. It's just that I have a tendency to not really take full advantage of a transfer budget that's given to me, because I'm not looking at the higher end players. And again, that's a sliding spectrum. So even if I'm managing a lower league save, if you've got £200,000 to spend, like you're in League Two, or you're managing a more reputable club in the conference, for example, if you've got £100,000 to £200,000 to spend, I'm probably not going to spend all of that money, because I'm not going to find a player that's a £100,000 player that's going to want to come and play for me. It might be 3 or 4 players that cost 10 grand each, but those players. But there's no point in buying 20 £10,000 footballers, because I just don't need them, and it's going to ruin the squad dynamics. It's one of those things. As you say, flip side of that coin, it's nice to have just a little bit of contingency money left there, because you just never know what's going to happen in terms of other players' happiness at their clubs. If there's Renato Sanchez, we hate to go back to him, but he was somebody who was there. I was fortunate enough to have the money at the time where he was suddenly looking to leave the club. If I'd gone bigger and spent more money quicker, that wouldn't have happened. But at the same time, there weren't players that were worth more money that I was looking to bring in, if that makes sense. So that was more of a happy accident than anything else. But it's not something I'm consciously doing to, for the sake of saying, well, we might need this further down the line. It was just more of a happier coincidence that it had happened.
So, for me, if I was in your shoes and I had £40 million going into deadline day, I am 100% spending it, because this is the element, okay, where the child within me kicks in and I go, this could be really fun. Like, imagine I just spend, and I might just buy one player, and I go, you know what? I'm going to splurge it all, and I'm going to spend 40 million on deadline day on this player. And if it doesn't work out, I'm playing a video game. And it's one of the few times that I do I'm able to sort of take myself away from and go, this would just be really fun. And if it doesn't work out, it's just kind of funny, isn't it? And I'll be able to sell him for something in January if it doesn't work out, probably. But yeah, that's always something I'm tempted by, to just, I suppose the question is, saver or spender? Saver or spender? Where do you lie? Please let us know.
Exactly. Please do. Please do. Because we've sat here, we've talked about our transfer window policies and how we approach it, but we also love to hear how you guys do it as well. It's one of the things we really, really enjoyed. We love a save update. We love any topic of discussion we've brought up on pod. We'd like to know what you do. Yeah, you, specifically you. Just everyone else stop listening to this. It's just you now. Just you now. Like you. How do you do it? We want to know. We definitely want to know. It's one of those things, because like I said, everyone does it differently. That's the beauty of Football Manager. It's just, so everyone plays it differently. There is no wrong way of playing the game. We haven't said that for a while on podcasts, but however you play, however you have fun with this game, that is the right way of playing the game for you. And don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Unless it turns into a debate and Kev then wins, and then you just feel like obliged to do whatever it is that Kev was debating, because it's just Kev and he's just too nice, and you just don't want to, you don't want to contradict him in any way, shape, or form, because that's just how it works.
Well, of course, he's just too lovely.
He's just too lovely, and I wouldn't want to disappoint him. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
One thing on that note, talking about, people getting involved and that sort of thing. We actually had a message in Discord this week, didn't we, from SportMad72, who let us know that they're just getting into their save for the first time. They're getting into the game, and they found the training elements really interesting. They're going to give that a go, and that's really lovely to hear that people are listening to pods and they're going, you know what, I'm going to give that aspect of the game. And I felt when we first started talking about it, that might be the case. That people like us, let's face it, like us, we're leaving training and just not really touching it, even though it is an element of the game. It's not the be all and end all. You absolutely don't have to do it, but it's just another aspect. And it was just nice to hear that SportMad gave it a go and wanted to give us a little bit of feedback about it, about how their save was going. So please do drop, if you aren't in the Discord already, drop into the Discord. We're always there. We're all there. We'll all talk. Jeb's still about, so he'll still talk as well if he's your favorite. And we've still got. We're always willing to talk on YouTube or Discord. We do our best to respond to everything.
100%. And again, Sportman as well. The first full season they did, and the best thing about it, one of the things that really popped me, it was in Mad Scientist Retro Database. Yeah. So again, that hasn't come up for a little while, but what a database! What a database that is. Sunderland smashed it. Promotion. Wow. Perfect. Well, we did mention something just a couple of seconds ago, Callum. I mentioned something, which I think will take us nicely into kind of, I suppose, the final section of today's podcast, because we talked about very briefly there, not wanting to disappoint Kev. And I feel that collectively, I don't think we have, if you average out kind of what we got up to last weekend. But if you look at it individually, you could make the compelling argument that I might have and you didn't. Because if you may remember, dear listener, you may remember, last Sunday, Callum and I, we got we put our big boy PvP pants on, didn't we? And we played some FM Super League. We drafted the week before. We chatted about drafts on stream last week. We drafted. Kev backed us both for the final because it's Kev, and of course he did. He backed the boys. Weirdly, a lot of other people backed me as well. We played our games last weekend. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Super League format, by the way, it's 2 groups of 4. The top 2 teams from each, you play each other once. Top 2 teams from those groups then go and play in a 2-legged semi-final and then a final. Callum, you and I, we found ourselves in the same group, didn't we, mate? And of course, it was the Derby Della FMT that opened proceedings, arguably the highest profile game of the tournament in week 1. Not often you see that, is it? Talk to us, mate. How did you find that experience? How did you find, I think, the first time we've ever played each other in PvP?
It was, yeah. I mean, it was lovely, wasn't it? It was nice. It's always nice to have a chat. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it was the perfect result because we drew 1-1 and we didn't beat each other. It was all part of the deal, and we knew exactly what we were doing. Look behind the scenes; it was all planned. It was fixed. Match fixing was involved, and yes, we drew 1-1. It was a very courteous game. We shook hands at the end. It went very well. As we say, a real shock that it wasn't the massive game it was the big derby ultimately, and
huge.
The most kind-hearted derby there has ever been, I would say. But ultimately, it's a derby nonetheless. But I mean, I'll be honest with you. My experience of the Super League, it was probably the most I have enjoyed a PvP draft. And I think that was down to a lot of things. I think the show was very well run. Hats off to Murph again for putting on a really nice show, especially in a period where a lot of PvP isn't happening. Murph still went forward with it, which I think is a really good thing. Filled that PvP gap for a lot of people, I think. And from people I've spoken to after it, they were sort of like, "Oh, how do I get involved in this? I want to have a go at this," which is brilliant. And that's exactly what I want. And even a few people said to me they've already applied for the qualifiers, which is fantastic. And if you want to do that, do it. Like, apply for the qualifiers, definitely. So that was really, really nice. And I just think as a whole, I think the panel did very well when I watched them back. I think it was a mixture of experience and new boys on a panel. And I think that worked really nicely. Pokes had his first try at a panel. I thought he was great in classic Pokes fashion. Although every time I seemed to click onto the channel, he did seem to be slating me. But other than that, it was great. Kev is an absolute delight on any panel, as we all know. He's the god tier of panelists. And then they had the incredibly chatty, cheeky Owen. How we roll, Owen! What a guy!
Scallywag.
Oh, he's a right scallywag, isn't he? That's a great way of describing him. I
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of time for Owen. He's brilliant, and he was backing me throughout
Mm-hmm.
as well, which I appreciated. And then we also had Cozza Bob, who I genuinely think is incredibly underrated as a panelist. I
Mm-hmm.
spoke on my stream about this. I just think he's brilliant, because what I like about Bob is he's not afraid to go against people's views. So like if everyone's
Mm-hmm.
thinking one thing, Bob will go, actually, no, I disagree. I think this. He's very knowledgeable. He's also very, very knowledgeable within the draft scene. Talking about drafts, not necessarily a ranked draft, but one of the most welcoming community drafts out there is the Cozza Cup. And if you haven't ever been involved with the Cozza Cup that Bob runs, it's every Wednesday. It's very much an open door policy. Anyone can come and have a go. You don't have to be a streamer. You just have to want to be able to play FM. And it was the first draft I ever got involved in, the Cozza Cup, and it's something that I've always held quite close. So definitely get involved with that. So yeah, as I say, the panel were absolutely brilliant. And it was just a good time. It was just a good time, I think. Obviously, without going into results, should we start with your results, Rich? Should we go through how you felt?
Yeah, I suppose, because it won't take as long as it will for you. So I guess my experience was on the pitch was, I don't want to say underwhelming, because I don't want to feel like I'm doing myself a disservice, but also it was just massively underwhelming. I saw some of the information, some of the bits the panel were putting out before the game, like the in-game odds. I think one of the graphics that Trek put out, I was on paper, I was the favourite for the competition based on my squad. Because again, I will maintain I drafted well. For somebody who went in there without a plan, I drafted me a team. The budget was friendly enough to allow me to do it. You know, I'm not a drafting expert by any stretch of the imagination. Don't get me wrong, but the budget was flexible enough to allow me to just basically take advantage of having the double pick at the end and be like, right, what's left at the end of every round, and being able to draft myself a solid squad. Had them set up the way that I thought I'd do well within PvP. It was the old the Inter Milan tactic from a retro save, which I've used in PvP before. Won me the first ever FMT versus the community. Thank you very much, because I'm just class at PvP apparently when it's not on stream or ranked. So I set up and I was like, right, I've drafted the players for the system, and I thought, right, this will do some damage. Obviously, Callum, we played each other game one. We drew 1-1. Definitely, I think I had the much better first half in our fixture, and I think you definitely grew into the game in the second. I think I had chances early doors, as did you, but I think feasibly, it's a game that I don't like to say it because it's you, but I could have won. I think it was a game that I could have taken. It's a game I could have taken 3 points from. Scored early and then never really built on it, which I think was a reoccurring theme across the games. Obviously, there's the two people in our group. We had FM King, who, as it turns out, #1 ranked drafter. Not bad, not bad. And we also had Trek, who, chucked a bit of shade at the pod over the course of the week in the build-up. How dare he? It turns out he dared. He dared, and we just let him. We just let him because we're too nice and we're
exactly. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Say what you want, mate. Say what you want. I agree. I agree with everything. Played FM King in my second fixture. Now, King was on the receiving end of a bit of a battering from Trek in game one. I think was it 7-0 or 7-1?
Yeah, 7-0.
7-0. #1 ranked drafter, FM King, got a 7-0 spanking from Trek. I'm like, well, if I'm ever going to play the #1 ranked drafter, this is probably the best time to do it. And very much like our game, Callum, I took an early lead, scored an early goal, and I was in control of the game, but I just couldn't find a second goal. It almost seemed like the boys scored the first goal and the lads just went, job done. No problem at all. Easy peasy. Who's he got up front? Kylian Mbappe. Never heard of him. Never heard of him. He'll never amount to anything. Never amount to anything. But kept him quiet for a cumulative 89 minutes. Unfortunately, just a howling defensive error from Mukiele, I think it was. Just let the ball bounce. A missed header because it always comes back to missed headers on FM. Just let Mbappe through, and Mbappe equalised just before half-time. Couldn't score again. Like we at that point we were looking good, solid defensively, an attacking threat, but just weren't converting chances. Didn't kill the game. Could have beaten King. Like again, it wasn't a point won, it was 2 points dropped. So from our opening 2 fixtures, in theory, we could have been on 6 points. We could comfortably been on 6 points, top the group, and that would have been that. Played Trek in my final fixture, and Trek did me. I don't think there's no way to put it politely. He used his fullbacks particularly well drafted. Technically, on paper, the strongest fullback in the database, who I wasn't particularly interested in drafting for reasons, but he used him very, very well. Really, really good set pieces, really great crossing. Just took advantage of me from set pieces, from wide deliveries. I was outplayed by Trek, and there's no shame in saying it. Lost 3-1, finished the group on 2 points, which didn't get me through to the semis, which was frustrating for me, Callum, because had I managed to maybe, procure a different result in the last week of fixtures, it might have been a bit of a different story as to who went through. How did your group stage go, pal?
My group stage, I walked away going, that's gone fantastically. But in reality, like, it was a funny one. Obviously, it did go better than Rich's. I unfortunately for Rich did qualify from the group. I drew as we say, 1-1 with yourself, and that was the most important game that I played all tournament, because what happened, no, genuinely though, because in the first half, I'd set up for a certain formation, and that was the formation I was going to do throughout the whole tournament. And I said this on last week's pod. It's the first time I've ever gone into a draft and drafted for a formation rather than drafted good players and then made a formation after it. So what I did was I set up a formation, and then outside of that formation, I had 2 others. One was an attacking version of that, and one was a defensive version of that. So against you, I played the standard one, if you like, in the first half, and you were much better than me. So I went, right, the only thing I can do here is move to the attacking formation and see whether that has an impact. And it did. We got a goal back, and we got a point from that game. So I went, right, chat, what do we do here? Do we go back to the standard, or do we now stick to the attacking? And it was overwhelmingly, we go for the attacking formation. So I then did, after that game, genuinely alter, and that was now my default formation, if you like. I then went into the second game against, so you obviously played FM King, having just lost 7-0. I took on Trek, who had just won 7-0. So obviously everybody, having known my background on drafting, which is not very good, having seen that I didn't beat you, so we were sort of level pegging. They had no reason to think that I would get anything against 7-0 victor Trek, understandably so. And Trek took an early lead. It was quite funny because I've watched the footage back, and Pokes was watching the game, and it was very much like, well, how many? In fact, I think at one point Murph said before a ball was kicked, well, why Callum? If he loses by 4 or 5, this is what happened. Hold on a second, ball's not been kicked yet. Give me a chance. I've not lost 5-0 before a ball's been kicked. But Murph literally, look at the VOD. He said it. Murph, I'm calling you out. Anyway, so he was saying that. So Trek went 1-0 up very early on, and the whole panel were like, oh, of course he has, like he's going to beat him by loads, just like Murph said. Anyway, Dusan Tadic turns up, bangs one in, it's 1-1. Out of nowhere, suddenly Trek goes radio silent on the Discord. He did not see this going. He thought he was walking it again. Stroke of half time, similar to your Mbappe incident. Stroke of half time, free kick, not far out. I noticed that Dusan Tadic is also quite good at free kicks. I thought, you know what? Let's give him a go. He curls it round the wall into the back of the net. We go 2-1 up on the stroke of half time. I didn't hear from Trek until the end of the game then, when he said, GG's, mate. Yeah, GG's. Because he was not happy about it at all. I beat him 2-1. I beat Trek 2-1. I mean, spoiler alert, the only person to beat him in the tournament, just saying. And that was quite a feat. I was over the moon about that, because I've watched Trek draft in playoffs before. Trek's good at drafting. Trek is a good drafter. He knows what he's doing. I knew he would be very dangerous within this pool and within this tournament. Last game, however, I was in this bizarre scenario. So I was on 4 points and we did the maths and basically I was through, but I wasn't through. So it was very unlikely that I couldn't get through. But FM King had to beat me. I think it was something in like a 3-goal swing or something like that. If he beat me in a 3-goal swing and then Trek won, they would both go through. Equally, I think if you'd beaten Trek, you would go. Anyway, basically, it was very unlikely I wouldn't go through. So I looked at my squad and went, right, I got my 2 defensive midfielders and my centre halves all had bookings. I don't want to risk them for the semi-final that I think I'm going to get into here. So I'm going to rest them all. They were obviously very important to the way I played, but I thought, you know what, I'm not going to risk them. And the game against FM King was absolute mayhem. Absolute mayhem, without breaking down every goal because there were 7 of them. I lost 4-3. I lost 4-3 in the game. I do wonder in a different universe if I had played my 3 players whether I wouldn't have lost 4-3. I don't know. And I wonder whether that had anything to do with the morale going into the semi-final as well. So I was a little bit aggrieved because the yellow cards got wiped and I did not know yellow cards were going to get wiped. And that's my fault for not reading the manual, but I was a bit gutted going into it. So then I did get through to the semi-final. FM King only beat me by 1, so it wasn't enough. And I went through second in the group. So I took on the tactics legend and man who had got 9 points out of 3 games, GYR. The man who, I'm going to be completely honest with you, I didn't really want to face. I didn't want to face GYR. As much as, CarX was obviously the other person I could have potentially faced. CarX in the Trek level of very, very good drafter. Like there's no denying that. He knows what he's doing. He won the last Super League. He's very, very good at what he does. But GYR scares me because PvP is something where I feel like I can set up a tactic and it's an all right tactic. But then when people react to that tactic and make changes, that's when I struggle because I don't fully know PvP enough to then be able to react to the reaction, if you like. GYR probably has about 309 formations that he has just got at the click of a button that he can just move to. He was not the one I wanted to face. He really wasn't. Anyway, it was a 2-legged semi-final. I was really excited because I was matching him. I was matching him all the way. And I was 2-1 up against him in the first leg away from home. And I thought, the away home bias is still a thing in FM, definitely. And I thought, if I could steal a 2-1 away victory here, this would be incredible. And then my centre half who'd been so dependable all the way through the tournament up to now, Arthur Theet, he made a huge blunder at the back, got tackled, and with basically the last kick, it was 2-2. But everyone was like, no, a 2-2 draw away from home is still a really good result. Take the context of this. We take this into the second leg. And we did. And once again, we played really, really well against him. Evan Nielsen remembered how to score, which was a massive relief because he'd forgotten throughout the whole tournament. And we went 1-0 up. GYR got back 1-1. So it's 3-3 on aggregate at this point. We go up the other end. Evan Nielsen scores again. We're 2-1 up again. Remarkable scenes. The minutes tick away, Rich. 90th minute, 91, 92. 93, I'm sweating now. 94, 95, we're there. Surely 96, there's a highlight.
Oh.
It's a throw in within his half, though, so it's fine.
Yeah. Nothing will happen. Nothing happens from those.
The centre midfielder takes it on, plays it through the centre, pierces my defence. The left back, who I just brought on just to freshen up the back line, completely out of position. His man goes through, slides it into the back of the net in the 96th minute. It's 2-2. We're going to extra time. Life is hard. Extra time comes in, and I mean, we all know where this is going. This isn't a happy ending, I'm afraid, listeners. And GYR shows his excellence. and does beat me in extra time. I'll be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact score, but I think it was 4-2 in the end, because he was 3-2 up, and you have to go for it at that point, and I did, and I conceded another one, and it was all over. And you know, the semi-finalists were CarX, Trek, GYR, and inexplicably me, and and so there was no way. There was no way I was getting through that, and I was, as I say, I had a really, really good time. Trek went on to win the tournament, and he did fantastically to win the tournament. But I had a great time, and it's restored my faith in PvP, that tournament. It really has. And I want to get involved in it again now, because it was just really fun. It was really fun. So once again, thank you very much to Super League for inviting me, because I had a great time.
Exactly. Yeah. So echoing those sentiments, the invite was massively appreciated. I had a lovely day. The results on the pitch, disappointing, but just getting to hang out. Just getting to hang out with the community, getting to chat to people is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, for me, that is the most enjoyable thing about PvP for me. We had a good old chat, because I think Trek had some technical issues, so we just killed about 25 minutes, which was great fun. Getting to chat to Trek, like FM King, we've spoken online, but I don't think we've ever actually properly chatted him. He was lovely, really.
He is so lovely. I'd never spoken to him before either.
Such a nice boy,
really nice boy.
Such a nice boy. So yeah, that for me was brilliant fun. I think, Callum, you hit the nail on the head there. I think that this is one of the reasons that I struggle with PvP as well. It's reacting to the other people's reactions, which is my you're like, and playing somebody like GYR, who shout out to Gareth, such a lovely guy. He is as beautiful as he is tactically astute. What an absolute stud he is.
Superstar.
Honestly, it reminds me of I think we might have brought it up before. It was the first Tony Jameson versus the community, but he was just doing kind of like one-on-one drafts against people, and he played Bust the Net. He played Daljit, and every time Tony moved a player around the pitch or changed a certain role, Daljit's like, "Oh, well, I see you've just changed one of your central midfielders to a ball-winning midfielder rather than Mazzala. Don't worry, here's one of my 70 tactics that's going to completely nullify it. But don't worry, all the players on the pitch work perfectly in this formation as well, because I'm really, really good." And you're like, oh, what do you do though? What do you do? It honestly, when people do that, it's like chess grandmaster versus somebody who might have, watched a game of chess on the TV with the sound off, and they're just having a go. You're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this situation.
I don't think this would be my addition to PvP. I don't think you should be able to see the roles the players are playing in, because I don't think that's realistic. Because in reality, in a real game of football, if you brought your centre mid over and said, right, I want you playing a bit further forward now, and I want you being our playmaker in midfield, the other manager's not going to go, right, he's now a deep playing playmaker on support. It's not going to happen, is it? You're going to know their formation, you're going to know where they are. But I don't know. There is certain elements, and I would say that not just in PvP, really. When even if you're playing offline in a save, should you necessarily know the actual roles? By all means, the positions. Absolutely. If they suddenly move a centre half up front, you should be able to see that, because you'd be able to. You have eyes, but the actual roles themselves, I'm not sure. I'd be interested to know other people's opinions on that, because I don't know whether you should be able to, because that could be the change that wins you the game. But if you do that, and then people can immediately react to that and go, oh, well, now they're playing with a centre midfielder and attack rather than a DM. I don't know. I'm not sure if you should be able to.
Good question. Very, very good question. Again, let us know your thoughts and feelings. They are valid, and we are here to listen to them. I think it's a very, very good point you made there, pal. A very, very good point indeed. Yeah, I agree. Personally, I do agree. I think it's those subtleties to the way that you set your team up that, if you get it right, those are the things that could give you the edge. And if your opponent is aware of those straight away, then maybe we'll see.
I mean, you could judge it, couldn't you? You could judge it on seeing how that player's playing. Like if you go, oh, that's quite clearly he's a ball winner now because he's chasing me everywhere. That's different. But actually being able to see it on them, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, again, there are subtleties to it. I mean, look at last year, for example. Look, if you look at FMT PvP, when I think it was Clates realised that 3 strikers were just the key to winning. But again, there are subtleties to how you set those 3 strikers up, aren't there? Because suddenly, if you see that they've brought on, it's like, right, I've got Mbappe up top, but either side of them, I've got Andy Carroll and I've got Wout Weghorst, then it's more than likely that those guys are probably going to be target forwards. So no, I've brought them both on as poachers. It's like, no, because that's silly. That's very, very silly. So you can guess, can't you? That like that's a very extreme example. Generally speaking, you're like, okay, well, I need some kind of impetus. I can probably guess how I'm going to stop this. But then again, if you guess wrong, you get it wrong, then you're going to concede goals, and that's kind of the point, I suppose. Exactly. But yeah, let us know. Let us know what you think, because we care. Well, it feels weird saying it with just the 2 of us, mate. But Callum, I don't know about you, pal, but I reckon that's a podcast.
In the words of Kev, absolutely.
There it is. There it is. And in the words of Jebaru, lovely stuff. How did you get my phone number? There we go. Things that Jeb might say if he was here. Bless him. Yeah, there we go. Well, that was, I've got to say, mate, I've really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed. Shockingly enough, what are the chances that I've sat here and enjoyed a podcast record? Because I've enjoyed all of them. But today in particular, it's the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to use the Kev optimism. Well, it is sad that we couldn't have Kev joining us this week, and it's sad that we couldn't have Jeb joining us this week. Flip side of that coin, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to spend the last kind of hour and 15 minutes in your company, Callum. So thank you very much, pal. It's been lovely.
Right back at you, Rich. Right back at you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
And really, really excitingly for me, 10 minutes ago, I've already thought of the title of this week's episode. So there we go. What a result. What a result. Before we wrap up, mate, before we say goodbye to the people, if people want to watch you and the 2 greatest players in FM history doing bits for Slough in League One, where can they do so?
Excellent question. They can find me over at Callum on Twitch. I'll be streaming quite a bit this week, is my plan, because I am a teacher and I am on half term. So I will be spending a bit of time alongside planning and marking. I will also be streaming, so that will be fun. So yes, they should see a little bit of my face this week. If that is something that interests you, if not, please stay away from Callum on Twitch, because my face is there. I'll be honest with you. Where can everyone find you, Rich?
Contradictory to yourself, Callum, although I'm not a teacher, I also work in a school, and it's half term for me as well. But as the owner and keeper of 2 small children, unfortunately, my streaming time this week is limited. I wish it wasn't, because I would hit the Scandi Triple Crown hard if it was not the case. But if you would like to see me streaming, you can do so at twitch.tv/RichOwensFM. And at Rich Owens FM on Twitter as well. Just before we go as well, actually, Callum, congratulations, mate. I saw you've hit a bit of a milestone in 1,500 followers on Twitch this week, but thoroughly deserved. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, if I'm honest with you, mate.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people
thinking.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. And do you know what I've heard? 1,500 people can't be wrong. So there you go.
I heard the opposite. Mate. I heard the opposite.
They are the only incorrect 1,500 people on the planet.
Exactly.
The irony. What are the chances? What are the chances? Oh, those fiends. No, congratulations, pal. We were very, very happy with you. We saw that news come through. If you're not one of those 1,500 people and you'd like to be, then just get involved. Go on. Do the thing. Do the thing. Do the thing. Do it right now. But that, ladies and gentlemen, friends, audience, you wonderful, wonderful human beings, that brings us to the end of another episode of Football Manager Therapy. Thank you very much for listening or watching or just hanging out outside my house listening through the window. However you have consumed this podcast, we appreciate you enormously. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. We love you lots. Bye-bye.